Death is only an experience through which you are meant to learn a great lesson. You cannot die. The greatest mystery in human existence has always been what happens after we die. Today, our modern world treats death as the ultimate end, a terrifying unknown. But what if I told you that for thousands of years, across vastly different civilizations, our ancestors shared an astonishing understanding of death that's been almost completely forgotten? Across nearly every ancient culture, from Egypt to Tibet to Greece, death wasn't feared. It wasn't the end. It was seen as a doorway, a transition, a return. These civilizations didn't just believe in the soul, they built their entire cultures around preparing it for what comes next. And yet today, most of us live as if death is final, terrifying, unknowable. But what if that fear isn't natural? What if it's a product of forgetting? Today, we're diving into the hidden history of the soul, a journey through ancient temples, mystical texts, and near-death revelations that challenge everything we've been taught about life, death, and what it means to truly exist. What we're exploring today isn't merely historical curiosity. It's a profound understanding of consciousness that shaped entire civilizations. The ancient wisdom about the soul might be exactly what our modern world needs to rediscover. Join me as we uncover what our ancestors understood about the eternal nature of who we truly are. The ancient Egyptians didn't just build pyramids. They created perhaps the most sophisticated understanding of the soul humanity has ever known. For them, what we casually call the soul was actually a complex, multidimensional reality composed of several distinct elements, each with its own purpose in both life and the afterlife. At the core of Egyptian belief were the Ka and Ba. The Ka was your life force, your vital essence. It was created at birth and remained connected to your physical body, even after death. This is why Egyptians left food offerings in tombs. The Ka needed sustenance to continue existing in the afterlife. Meanwhile, the Ba represented your unique personality and consciousness. Often depicted as a human-headed bird, the Ba could travel freely between worlds after death, visiting loved ones and returning to the tomb each night. What's fascinating is that these weren't the only aspects of the soul. Egyptians also recognized the Shut shadow, the Ren name, the Ib heart, and more, each representing different facets of the complete self. When your Ka and Ba reunited after death, they formed the Ak, your transfigured immortal self that could dwell among the stars with the gods. This transformation represented the ultimate goal of Egyptian spiritual practice. After death, the soul embarked on a perilous journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. This wasn't a place of punishment, but a landscape of trials and transformations. The soul would encounter strange guardians, dangerous creatures, and mystical gateways, all detailed in funerary texts like the Book of the Dead. The journey culminated in the Hall of Truth, where Osiris, god of the afterlife, presided over the weighing of the heart. If your heart, the seat of your moral character, balanced against the feather of Mayat, truth, you were deemed worthy to enter the field of reeds, a paradise that mirrored your earthly life in its most perfected form. What's profound is that this wasn't merely religious belief, but an entire technology of consciousness. The pyramids themselves, with their precise geometrical alignments and sacred proportions, were designed not just as tombs, but as transformative environments that could amplify consciousness and facilitate the soul's journey. For the Egyptians, death wasn't the opposite of life. It was its continuation in another form. The elaborate mummification process wasn't driven by superstition. It was a sophisticated method designed to preserve the body so the Ka and Ba could reunite, allowing for continued existence. This wasn't mere wishful thinking. It was a complete cosmology founded on the understanding that consciousness transcends physical form, a wisdom that permeated Egyptian civilization for over 3,000 years. Half a world away from Egypt, in the snow-capped mountains of Tibet, another profound understanding of death emerged. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Bardo Thodol, is perhaps the most detailed guidebook to the afterlife ever created. Its title actually translates to liberation through hearing during the intermediate state, a profound clue to its purpose, as it was designed to be read aloud to the dying and recently deceased. What makes the Tibetan understanding remarkable is how precisely it maps the journey of consciousness after physical death through the bardos, which are transitional states where consciousness exists without a physical body. According to Tibetan Buddhism, the bardos of death unfold in 3 distinct phases over a period of up to 49 days. First comes the Chikai Bardo, the moment of death, where consciousness encounters the clear light of reality. This luminous awareness is described as the mind of clear light of death, and represents our fundamental Buddha nature, the pure state of consciousness that the Dalai Lama calls the real source of all consciousness. This initial encounter with clear light offers a profound opportunity for immediate liberation from the cycle of rebirth, if one can recognize it as the fundamental nature of mind itself. If this recognition doesn't occur, consciousness enters the Chonyid Bardo, the second phase, where it experiences a series of visions, both peaceful and wrathful. What's fascinating is that these aren't considered external realities, but projections of the mind itself, shaped by one's karma and mental state at death. Finally comes the Sidpa Bardo, the state preceding rebirth, where consciousness is drawn toward its next incarnation based on karmic patterns and attractions. What's revolutionary about this understanding is that death isn't seen as an end, but as a unique spiritual opportunity. In the Bardo state, consciousness is said to be exceptionally clear and sensitive, 7 times more lucid than in ordinary life, making it an ideal time for spiritual awakening. The Bardo Thodol doesn't just describe these states, it actively guides the deceased, reminding them that the visions are their own mental projections and providing instructions for liberation at each stage. The text assumes consciousness persists after physical death, capable of hearing and benefiting from these teachings. This perspective views death not as something to fear, but as a transformative process offering profound opportunity for spiritual realization. Even those who weren't spiritually advanced in life have a chance to achieve enlightenment in the Bardo state. What's striking is how these ancient descriptions align with modern accounts from people who've had near-death experiences, the tunnel, the light, the life review, and encounters with peaceful and sometimes frightening beings. Are these modern experiences glimpses of the Bardo state that Tibetan masters mapped centuries ago? Moving to the meeting place of Egyptian, Greek, and early Christian thought, we find Hermeticism, a philosophical and spiritual tradition named after Hermes Trismegistus, believed to be a fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. At the heart of Hermetic philosophy is the principle expressed in the famous Emerald Tablet: as above, so below, as below, so above. This principle reveals a profound truth. A correspondence exists between the macrocosm, the universe, and the microcosm, the individual soul. What exists in the heavens is reflected within each person, and what exists within each person is reflected in the cosmos. From this perspective, death isn't an end, but a transformation. Hermes teaches, death is not real. It is just dissolution and transformation. The physical body returns to the cosmos, while the purified mind ascends to reunite with divine consciousness. The Corpus Hermeticum describes the soul's journey off to death as an ascent through the planetary spheres. As it rises, the soul progressively sheds the material influences of each sphere, releasing the 12 irrational tormentors of matter, such as ignorance, greed, and anger, replacing them with divine virtues like knowledge, justice, and truth. What's remarkable is that Hermeticism doesn't see this just as a posthumous journey. Through spiritual practice, the initiate can experience a rebirth while still alive. A transformation Hermes describes as going out of myself into an immortal body. This represents the attainment of a luminous divine form, no longer subject to material suffering. Unlike many traditions, Hermeticism teaches that the soul retains its individuality even as it reconnects with the divine source. It doesn't merge anonymously with the all, but maintains its distinct essence. This parallels many concepts like astral travel or out-of-body experiences. Now consider who may have inspired Robert Monroe to create his hemisync tapes. For Hermeticists, liberation comes through gnosis, direct, experiential knowledge of the divine that transcends intellectual understanding and dissolves the illusion of separation between self and God. This second birth frees the soul from the cycle of reincarnation. The implications are profound. Consciousness doesn't end at death, but continues its journey, either ascending toward the divine or cycling through further incarnations until it achieves purification. The goal isn't to escape existence, but to realize one's inherent divinity. These Hermetic principles aren't just ancient philosophy. They influenced Renaissance thinkers, scientists, and continue to resonate with our emerging understanding of consciousness as fundamental rather than incidental to reality. What's fascinating is that modern near-death experience research is beginning to scientifically validate what ancient traditions have always claimed. People who have clinically died and been resuscitated often report remarkably similar experiences. A sensation of leaving the body, moving through a tunnel toward a brilliant light, encountering deceased loved ones, and experiencing profound peace and unconditional love. Dr. Bruce Grayson, the world's leading expert on near-death experiences, has found that people consistently describe an overwhelming sense of peace and well-being and encounter what they can only describe as light. Not necessarily a physical light, but a living entity radiating tremendous love, acceptance, and warmth. What's particularly striking are the consistent elements across cultures and backgrounds. The out-of-body experience, the life review where one relives key moments with heightened emotional clarity, and the sense that what's experienced is realer than real. Scientific research suggests these experiences might be connected to a surge in brain activity at the time of cardiac arrest. Dr. Jimo Borjigan and colleagues discovered that areas of the brain responsible for visual experience become highly active during cardiac arrest, potentially explaining the perception of a bright white light. But what science is only beginning to understand, NDEers often report with conviction that consciousness exists beyond the physical body. Many describe a heightened awareness during clinical death, clearer thinking, enhanced perception, and access to knowledge they couldn't otherwise have known. One of the most profound insights from NDE research is the concept of pre-birth planning. Many who have these experiences report that the soul chooses its life circumstances before birth, selecting parents, challenges, and key relationships as opportunities for growth and learning. From this perspective, life's difficulties aren't random misfortunes, but purposeful lessons chosen by the soul for its evolution. This transforms our understanding of human suffering from meaningless tragedy to spiritual opportunity, exactly what ancient wisdom traditions have always taught. What's most significant is how these experiences transform people. Those who have NDEs typically return with reduced fear of death, increased empathy, greater appreciation for life, and diminished materialism, often describing the afterlife as their true home. The parallels between NDEs and ancient wisdom traditions are striking. The tunnel and light described in NDEs resemble the Tibetan Bardo journey. The life review mirrors the Egyptian weighing of the heart. The encounter with luminous beings echoes descriptions from virtually every spiritual tradition. Could it be that these ancient cultures weren't speculating, but describing genuine experiences of consciousness beyond the body? Experiences that modern science is only beginning to understand? While ancient traditions provide profound insights into the afterlife, the early 20th century brought a remarkable synthesis of these wisdom traditions through Rudolf Steiner's Anthroposophy. His detailed mapping of the soul's journey bridges ancient spiritual knowledge with modern consciousness. Anthroposophy describes death not as an ending, but as a threshold crossing, what Steiner called a victory of the spirit over material limitation. At this moment, consciousness doesn't diminish, but expands dramatically as it's freed from physical constraints. According to Steiner, the journey after death follows a specific sequence. First, the etheric body, life forces, dissolves, and the soul enters Kamaloka, a purgatorial state lasting roughly 1/3 of the person's lifetime. Here, the soul reviews its earthly existence, working through unresolved attachments and purifying itself of material desires. What's remarkable is how this life review resembles both Egyptian judgment and near-death experiences. The soul experiences its past actions from the perspective of those affected by them, feeling the joy or suffering it caused others. This isn't punishment, but a profound learning process. After this purification, the soul enters Devachan, a heavenly realm of spiritual expansion and rest. Here, the essence of one's life achievements is woven into the soul's fabric as capacities for future incarnations. Steiner described how the soul then journeys through planetary spheres: Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, each imparting specific qualities and forces for its next incarnation. This cosmic journey culminates at the realm of fixed stars before the soul begins its descent toward a new birth. What distinguishes Anthroposophy is its emphasis on the individual spirit's continuity. Unlike traditions where the soul merges with universal consciousness, Steiner maintained that each person's unique essence persists through all transformations, evolving through accumulated wisdom across multiple lives. The timing between incarnations is significant, generally 1,000 to 1,300 years, allowing Earth conditions to change sufficiently for new experiences. This rhythm aligns with cosmic cycles, particularly the sun's passage through zodiacal constellations. However, this pattern is changing in our era. Steiner noted that the pace of technological and cultural change has led to shorter intervals between incarnations, as souls return more quickly to participate in humanity's accelerated evolution. Perhaps most compelling is Anthroposophy's view of the relationship between the living and the dead. The deceased remain connected to us, influencing and sometimes communicating through dreams or intuitive experiences. Our remembrance and thoughts reach them, while they offer guidance from the spiritual world. Like the ancient Egyptians with their elaborate preparations, and the Tibetans with their Bardo teachings, Anthroposophy provides a detailed map of consciousness beyond death, one that emphasizes not escape from earthly existence, but conscious participation in the ongoing evolution of humanity and the cosmos itself. Our modern culture stands virtually alone in human history in its denial of the soul and the afterlife. This denial isn't based on superior knowledge. It's based on a philosophical assumption that only matter is real and that consciousness is merely a byproduct of brain chemistry. This materialist paradigm emerged relatively recently in human history, yet we've embraced it so completely that we now treat ancient wisdom as primitive superstition rather than sophisticated understanding. This denial creates a ripple of suffering that ancient traditions foresaw. Hermeticism calls it the great disease of the soul, mistaking material illusions for reality. Tibetan Buddhism warns that failing to recognize our true nature leads to endless samsaric suffering. Egyptian texts caution that neglecting the soul risks spiritual dissolution. And Steiner observed that denying the soul's reality disrupts our entire being, manifesting as both physical and psychological illness. Look around. Anxiety disorders affect millions. Depression rates soar. We're obsessed with youth and terrified of aging. We accumulate possessions yet feel increasingly empty. We hide the dying in institutions, treating death as failure rather than transition. Ecological destruction accelerates as we live, as if this lifetime is all that matters. But what if we reclaimed this ancient wisdom? We would approach aging as spiritual preparation rather than decline. Our relationship with dying loved ones would transform, supporting their transition rather than merely prolonging physical discomfort. Grief would still hurt, but without the despair of believing connection is forever lost. Our priorities would naturally shift from accumulation to awareness. Education would expand beyond material knowledge to include consciousness development. Our ecological perspective would broaden, recognizing our connection to Earth across multiple lifetimes. This isn't wishful thinking. People who have near-death experiences undergo precisely these transformations, emerging with reduced fear, greater compassion, and a purpose that transcends material concerns. The wisdom preserved across traditions isn't primitive superstition, but sophisticated understanding of consciousness that modern science is only beginning to approach. The convergence of quantum physics, consciousness research, and near-death studies reveals what our ancestors knew. Consciousness is fundamental to reality and continues beyond physical death. These ancient traditions share profound insights that can transform our lives today. The Egyptians teach us that living by truth and justice, ma'at, prepares our souls for judgment. The Tibetans emphasize ethical living and cultivating compassion as the foundation for peaceful transition. Hermeticism reveals that overcoming material vices and seeking self-knowledge aligns us with our divine nature. Anthroposophy encourages daily self-reflection and moral development, reminding us that our actions shape future incarnations. And those who've glimpsed beyond death through NDEs return with the clearest message of all. Love is the ultimate currency of existence. To live well is simple, yet profound. cultivate compassion, and treat others with kindness, knowing you'll experience the effects of your actions from their perspective. Pursue wisdom through continuous learning and self-reflection. Release attachment to material possessions and status, focusing instead on relationships and inner growth. Live authentically, expressing your unique purpose. Practice forgiveness of others and yourself to free your soul from burdens. Face mortality with peace rather than fear, understanding death as transformation rather than ending. These practices don't just prepare us for what comes next. They create a life of meaning, connection, and purpose right now. The wisdom of the ages isn't about escaping this world, but about living in it more fully, awake to the eternal journey of your consciousness. Thank you for journeying with me through the hidden history of the soul. This isn't just ancient knowledge. It's wisdom waiting to be reclaimed in our modern lives. Each of us carries the responsibility to remember these forgotten truths by living with compassion, seeking wisdom, letting go of materialism, embracing authenticity, practicing forgiveness, and facing mortality with peace. We don't just prepare for what comes next. We create lives of profound meaning right now. At the Lyra Wisdom Temple, we're dedicated to bringing these timeless teachings back into everyday life. Our journey doesn't end with this video. It's just beginning. If you found value in what we've shared today, please consider supporting our work. We offer wisdom-filled designs and teachings at thelira.com that help integrate these ancient principles into modern living. Together, we can rebuild what's been forgotten, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. The soul's journey isn't just personal, it's our collective heritage. Until next time, remember, you are not just a body having a temporary experience. You are an eternal consciousness on an infinite journey.